Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to Today in Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic. Today is February the 15th, 2017. And I have a very special guest on the show. Before we get to him, we're going to give his links below, of course. And there's a link below to yesterday's show, which was only a few hours ago. So check that out if you haven't already. So today, Jerry of the Ethereum Classic Ether Classic blog and Ether Classic Ether. I'm doing it backwards as I'm so tired. Classic Ether Twitter account is on the show. He was on our This Week in Bitcoin show last Friday, and he was a big hit. And he's here to talk about Ethereum Classic, of course, the philosophy behind Ethereum Classic and cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, all of those fun topics. And he's going to make you think. So I'm really excited. Jerry, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
So let's just jump right into how Ethereum Classic was born and some of the philosophical debates that kind of led to its creation and the DAO hack and how we got to where we are today with two different Ethereums.
Essentially, there was concern about the Ethereum Foundation providing too centralized a governance model. So if you look back to the beginning of cryptocurrency, the idea was that it would be decentralized in its governance, right? So Satoshi Nakamoto is a pseudonym for someone who had this idea in their mind. And they basically allude to what their concerns are in the Genesis block of the Bitcoin blockchain. And there's a message that's etched into the public ledger that says something along the lines of Chancellor on the verge of the second bailout of the banks. So what I intuit from reading that is that Satoshi, whoever they were, was concerned about too much centralized control in the issuance of currency. So Bitcoin provided a different model that was decentralized, where instead of having an authority that is printing up money or printing up currency, you have a protocol where the issuance of currency is already determined, and then you're able to abstract that authority out of the situation. So when you look at the DAO fork, it seems to have been executed based on the decision made by a very few number of people. And it went through very quickly. And all of these pose concerns for people who don't want cryptocurrency to be centralized in their governance model. So Ethereum Classic, the idea behind it is, let's retain the Ethereum technology, let's provide a more decentralized governance model. That's basically the idea behind retaining the immutable chain as a secondary instantiation of the Ethereum blockchain.
Okay, so the thing people have to understand here is that many people in the cryptocurrency sphere, in the ecosystem, are not fans of centralization. I mean, this is how cryptocurrency came about, basically. You're tired of central financial authorities controlling things. It seems to be a basic tenet. So what happened was a decision was made, a central authority type of decision was made, and the Ethereum forked to basically bail out what happened with the DAO. Can you again explain what the DAO exactly was, I guess?
Sure. I mean, it's important to recognize that if Ethereum hadn't done this contentious hard fork, there would have been no way to reimburse the DAO investors. The DAO was a smart contract platform that was developed by Slockit, these Ethereum developers based in Germany. And they had the backing of the Ethereum Foundation. The Ethereum Foundation signed on as curators for the DAO. So there was an extraordinary amount of confidence behind the idea that there would be this decentralized venture capital platform. So when the DAO started its crowd sale, they made a decision that was, in retrospect, very irresponsible, which is They didn't put any cap on the DAO, and they had a really long crowd sale. It was like a month. So tens of millions of dollars in Ether poured into this platform because people felt that it had the full confidence of the Ethereum Foundation. However, there was a flaw in the smart contract, and there was an exploit that a hacker was able to take advantage of to run this recursive function and drain a bunch of this investor funds out of the DAO, which was supposed to be impossible. Basically, when Ethereum was advertising the platform, they said you could build unstoppable applications, right, that have no possibility of downtime or censorship. But there were these flaws in the DAO that people didn't anticipate. So the funds got sucked out by this hacker, and then the Ethereum Foundation and what's called a white hat group, an anonymous group of hackers that was in communication with the Ethereum Foundation, they then had to actually go in and handle these funds themselves. And so all of this was very disastrous. The entire DAO fiasco was really a crisis of people having too much confidence in this small group of people making enlightened decisions in Ethereum.
So what we have now is Ethereum still exists. That the people who made the centralized decisions, they're still out there on Ethereum. Ethereum Classic, let's be clear to everyone, there is no Ethereum Foundation with Ethereum Classic. Anyone can get into Ethereum Classic. Anyone has a say. You've stepped up in the community and created your own marketing with your Twitter account and your blog account.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to be is in communication with investors regarding Ethereum Classic, and there's going to be different websites to developing for Ethereum Classic or mining. So with what I'm looking at in terms of Ethereum Classic, previously I talked about it being a secondary chain, but it's only secondary in terms of perception because the Ethereum Foundation still kind of controls public sentiment surrounding Ethereum. However, there's a very good argument that Ethereum Classic really corresponds more genuinely to the chain originating before the fork, because it was the forked chain that the Ethereum Foundation was able to manipulate in order to redirect funds from the hacker, the DAO hacker, to the Ethereum Foundation's control.
So let's talk about, I guess, the philosophy behind the Ethereum Classic and how it maybe corresponds with the original Bitcoin philosophy, and how this is a big deal because Ethereum, the Ethereum that's just called Ethereum now, really they don't seem to be as philosophical. Does Ethereum Classic really stand for something? And I think it does. But I wanted to point out that when Ethereum Classic was born, there are all these people trying to say it was a scam. Now and it's still around. So we've got people yelling things. We've got philosophical issues here. Now I don't hear anyone calling it a scam anymore. It just seemed to be a way to shut people off. So I just said a lot. So you
absolutely. No, I really I get upset when I hear those kinds of comments. It shows that to an extent, Ethereum Foundation is kind of controlling the perception of this thing. And there's kind of a reliance on previous models. So if people are thinking back to how private corporations are run, they're thinking not in terms of open source software, which has more flexibility, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't have Ethereum. If Bitcoin could patent every technological element, we would not be able to create other altcoins, right? We wouldn't have Ethereum basing its technology on the premise of Bitcoin. So open source is a central tenet of the entire cryptocurrency industry. And for that reason, when people say that Ethereum Classic is a scam because it isn't being controlled by the Ethereum Foundation, there's kind of a reluctance to recognize that this is actually a different paradigm, more fluidity between these various blockchain, these various chains, and the way that they feed off of each other in terms of what works and what doesn't work, and where can we experiment. So with Ethereum Classic, there's essentially this recognition that the Ethereum Foundation was using this move fast and break things approach, which was very exciting, but it kind of got ahead of itself. And the DAO fiasco is something that should really give us pause in considering whether they're being a little too hasty in the way that they proceed. Now, down the road, there's going to be this transition in Ethereum from proof of work to proof of stake consensus mechanisms. And that's totally predicated on the understanding that Vitalik Buterin, the head of Ethereum Foundation, will provide this thing called Casper, this consensus mechanism called Casper, but nobody really knows whether it'll work. Nobody's seen it. So down the road, there is this crucial transition that Ethereum needs to make. And we're really relying on the same people that were central to the entire DAO situation to maneuver that transition. So that gives me pause as an investor. That gives me concern. The idea with Ethereum Classic is they're now creating a model that's more in line with the Bitcoin model. It's a more conservative approach. It's more concerned with outlining the monetary strategy than I think Ethereum has really shown with the ETH chain.
So let's talk about outlining the monetary strategy here. Because you mentioned how Ethereum, you think they're actually going to do this and go to proof of stake. Now
that's their plan, yeah.
Well, then there would be a real clear differentiation for a lot more people, not just philosophically here, but financially. Obviously, if one is proof of stake, one is proof of work. So would you like to see, I mean, I know personally people are talking about Ethereum Classic staying proof of work and having a limit on the amount of coins produced at 210 million, I believe, correct?
Yeah, it's along the lines of the Bitcoin model, sure.
Yeah, so do you support that? I think that's something financial people can definitely get behind. It creates an aura of stability. When you don't know how many coins are going to be created, your faith is just in, like, there's this genius guy behind it. It must be great.
Yeah. There's a little too much of that in Ethereum, is the idea that there's a genius guy and we've got this kind of cult of personality rallying behind the unstoppable Ethereum Foundation. And that's really not based in rationality. That's based in kind of tribal kind of impulses. And it doesn't really, the precedent of the DAO doesn't really reflect well on that kind of feeling of confidence. So I'm for the monetary strategy approach that Ethereum Classic has proposed. It was written up by a developer named Snaproll. That's his GitHub profile. And I think it's essential for investors. Like I mentioned, I view there being three constituencies primarily to Ethereum Classic. And for the investor constituency that I belong to, I see outlining a predictable token issuance model as being essential, because that was the selling point for Bitcoin. If you go to institutional investors, if you're someone like Barry Silbert at Digital Currency Group and you're meeting with people who are on the fence about entering the crypto space, it really helps with Bitcoin to tell them, look, there's a predictable issuance. There are these halving events that everybody anticipates where the new Bitcoins that get granted to miners for securing the network gets halved, right? So there's a really predictable model for Bitcoin, and everyone knows that there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. So to secure that kind of model for Ethereum Classic, which is in the works, I think that would be really vital for the investors. And it just comes down to whether the developers are willing to go to bat for the investors, because there needs to be an improvement protocol that's issued, and the developers need to vet it and to implement it.
Yeah, I think going in the direction of a predictable, like Bitcoin is predictable. We know how much is going to be out there.
Totally.
Going in that direction is the way Ethereum Classic should be going. At the same time, we talked about, or you mentioned rushing, and Ethereum, ETH, is known for rushing. And one would think that in Bitcoin, people will have learned from that situation. What is your opinion in terms of rushing into a hard fork in Bitcoin versus the segregated witness situation? What can, philosophically, what can they take away from this situation, from the DAO situation? I think a lot.
I think it's a good question. I mean, I personally feel that you should prize security above all else, because when things are going awry, like we saw with Ethereum, you know, the DDoS attacks that were playing on the Ethereum chain and replaying on the Ethereum Classic chain following the DAO fork, that was really not what you want to see on a blockchain. So moving fast and breaking things, I think, is really problematic. And there are certain parallels that you can draw between the conservatism of Ethereum Classic, right, which is not going to jump straight into proof of stake, which, you know, this mechanism that hasn't been vetted or anything. As far as we know, as investors, we don't know what Casper has to offer. In terms of parallels, you can draw a parallel between the conservatism of Ethereum Classic and Bitcoin Core. I think that there are certain kinds of superficial parallels that can be drawn between Bitcoin Unlimited and Ethereum, ETH. Because I think the Bitcoin Unlimited approach is more aggressive. I think it's less vetted. There's less testing that's been done. And basically, my understanding of the Bitcoin Unlimited avenue is a desire to scale up faster, right? So that's kind of my view. I'm not really very deep into the Bitcoin Core versus Bitcoin Unlimited debate, but it was kind of foisted on Ethereum Classic when there was this initial coin offering coming out of China that apparently was being funded in Ethereum Classic, but would fund mining rigs in Bitcoin that would signal Bitcoin Unlimited. So that was kind of, it spilled over, the politics spilled over into Ethereum Classic.
Yeah, it's interesting how interconnected the cryptocurrency altcoin space can end up being. And I actually had a question dealing with that. Actually, you mentioned the I've heard you in another interview talk about the three constituencies, which you kind of referred to before. And I'd like you to kind of break down the three constituencies you see in Ethereum Classic, the checks and balances between the three of them, and is that those three groups? Is that in every altcoin? Would you say? Is that something that can be carried over to every crypto?
No, because the miners are one of the fundamental constituencies of Ethereum Classic. So in a proof of stake coin, you won't have miners.
Okay, so let's take a step back. So explain the three constituencies. Explain the three constituencies, how they work in Ethereum Classic, and how maybe they work in Bitcoin, but how they wouldn't work in other altcoins.
Well, I mean, it's just a thesis that I have, and anyone is open to presenting a counter argument. I just view it there being these three fundamental constituencies to ETC. There's the miners, there's the developers, and the investors. And what I think would help the network scale up the most successfully is for there to be respect between these three constituencies, and a reluctance or a reticence or a kind of a mutual agreement not for one constituency to dominate the others. Because we're going to have conflicting objectives, especially as it gets bigger. There's going to be conflicting objectives. So if we're not negotiating with each other and we're not willing to compromise in order to help everyone be satisfied, then there's going to be this uneven kind of playing field, which is actually destructive in an environment where there's three constituencies that are interdependent, right? That's the thing that's important to recognize. If the investors are thrown under the bus, the market price of the coin is going to drop, right? Because the investors are going to sell in order to exit. And that's going to harm the miners because they're reliant on the investors' commitment of capital in order to pay the electricity costs to mine the network and keep it secured, right? So there's an interdependence. If the miners get thrown under the bus, then the blockchain isn't secured and the developers can't run their dApps. That's the entire idea, is that it's interdependent, so attempting to dominate another constituency is just, in the long run, self-destructive. That's the thesis.
No, I think it's a very good thesis. I think it's something people should keep in mind, and I think it's important that in these communities, as they grow, they take into account all the constituencies. Everyone's got to say, everyone's got a unique perspective, and they can contribute a unique school of thought, I guess you could say, because everyone thinks a little, everyone cares about different things. Finance people think differently than tech people. Let's mesh it all together and get everyone thinking. I wanted to go take a step back, was when I'm not into these central authority type of coins. Anyone can make their own coin. That's great. There are all sorts of altcoins out there. Do you know about the coin, the altcoin, I guess you can call it, Ripple? Do you know about Ripple?
Yeah, I know a little bit about it.
Yeah, I'm confused why there's even that much of an interest in something like that. For me, it's kind of enlightening because it shows that not everyone in cryptocurrency is either aware of what Satoshi Nakamoto once said or wrote about, or they don't care, or people just are prone to go towards central authority to float that way. And I don't know what you know about Ripple, and if you could give me any insight into that, and talk about, again, going back to this Ethereum, how it's just the danger of the central authority in cryptocurrency, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where your sympathies lie. I think that with Ripple, the idea behind it is they want to provide an alternative to SWIFT. And so it's very conservative. It's trying to meet halfway between the SWIFT model, which apparently is subject to hacking. Like, I hear SWIFT gets hacked every so often. And Ripple is like this blockchain that wants to kind of meet it halfway. So it's very conservative in its approach, but it's trying to kind of be the missing link, if you will, between the legacy financial system and something that, like Bitcoin, which is a little probably more extreme than they want it to be. It's more insular, I think, Ripple, than the other top coins in market cap.
Here's a question, as someone in the chat actually brought up, that there are a huge number of non-principled people in the cryptocurrency space. One can say that you should have very strong principles, things that you stand for. And again, to me, Ethereum Classic stands for something very easy to understand and basic and good. And we're talking about constituencies. How does in the cryptocurrency space do we handle the constituency of very principled people versus people who are like, whatever, we can have a central authority. It doesn't matter. I just want to I just want to see the price go up. It doesn't stand for anything.
Yeah, there needs to be negotiation. I mean, you can't have everyone have equal agency, because then if someone purposefully wants to sabotage the network, you're giving them an invitation to do that. So it's a very tricky situation. But I think that there are genuine objectives that each of these constituencies will be able to clarify. So like, I'm an investor. I just argued why I think the monetary strategy needs to be implemented as soon as possible. The reason being so that institutional investors like Barry Silbert, when he's shopping his Ethereum investment trust, can say, this is the cap on the tokens, this is how they're going to be issued, we know what's going to happen in advance. So that's me conferring with other investors. I know what certain other investors think, and I know that we're in agreement. So I put forward this hypothesis, which is backed up by reason and evidence, and that's how we move forward, right? We want to argue our points using reason and evidence.
Yes, yes. That's people need to remember that in an era of lack of reasoning, it seems like, to go back to some of these basics here. Now, when we just touched on Ripple a second ago, I guess you consider it is a cryptocurrency. In the cryptocurrency space, there's a lot of confusion out there. How does one consider Ripple to be the same thing as Bitcoin? I mean, it seems like there should be, when people are talking about these two entities, that there should be some good clarification out there, because they don't seem to be the same thing to me at all on a lot of levels.
Yeah, I think that this really dovetails really well into the intellectual property issues surrounding Ethereum. I think that what you're mentioning about Bitcoin versus Ripple is, to me, an issue of open platforms versus not so open platforms. So the promise of Bitcoin is that it would be decentralized in many respects. So geographically, there's nodes all around the world. In terms of what you do with it, it's whatever applications are able to run on the platform. And you don't even need to be a human being to use Bitcoin, right? You can code a bot in order to trade tokens or do transactions. So it's very open and it's very flexible. And that is something that is unique to the world of open source software. You don't need to have certification to be a software developer. It's a very, very open space. And so where that comes into play with Ethereum is there's this kind of basic debate going on that's unresolved as to whether Ethereum is more legitimate than Ethereum Classic, versa. And I find that argument to be extremely compelling. I don't think the door has been shut on that. I don't think that we've come to a conclusion. So while I'm reluctant to pitch to people to buy Ethereum Classic, at least not until the monetary strategy has been implemented. So I'm kind of in the same boat as Digital Currency Group, which I mentioned before. I want to see that implemented before I'm confident in telling people that this is like a good store of value like Bitcoin. But what I really find compelling right here and now is, what is the argument that says that the forked Ethereum chain is more legitimate than the immutable chain that hasn't had its transaction layer meddled with? Because in open source software, I think there's a degree of flexibility about who owns what or who can purport to own what. It's more unusual than I think we tend to recognize based on what we understand from our previous models. You know what I mean, with corporations and with private businesses, with patenting and this kind of fencing off of intellectual property. It's a little different in the blockchain world, and I don't think we're really fully exploring that debate.
No, this is a deep debate, actually, and it seems to be something that people just want to gloss over, actually, and just say, "Oh, this is the real Ethereum. It's called Ethereum, so that's it. It's all in the name here. It's all in the name. Let's just move along here." Well, you know, then you have Ethereum Classic just continuing on the original chain. But when they go their different ways, when they go proof of work, if you guys say, if Ethereum Classic says proof of work and Ethereum goes proof of stake,
yeah,
that was the original plan was to go proof of stake. So will they, at that point, have the right to say we're the real Ethereum, because that was the original plan all along? we're the legitimate one because we're following this plan that was the original plan all along.
Well, part of the question is, if you provide a plan, how detailed does it have to be? I mean, they're saying that it will go onto proof of stake and it will incorporate Casper, and no one really knows what Casper entails. I don't think it's been completed. So, you know, some way down the line, Ethereum will transition to X. No one really knows what that is. I think it's a more conservative method that Ethereum Classic is taking on by, you know, incorporating what's worked in Bitcoin. And I think that the idea that Ethereum Foundation should monopolize the agenda is a little too beholden to previous models, these kinds of top-down command and control models. The thing is that for corporations, we're so used to there being this godlike figure, you know, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk. We're really familiar with the idea of great corporations being led by these godlike figures. That doesn't really work for networks. You know, you don't want to have the mayor of the internet, right? So with a blockchain, we might be imposing these models that really don't fit. And I think that might have been one of the reasons why Satoshi used a moniker and then checked out, right? Because he didn't want to be mistaken for being the arbiter of what goes on with Bitcoin from here on in, right? He didn't want to have that authority. He wanted to open it up to a decentralized kind of debate on the future trajectory of Bitcoin. And all of the real major decisions had already been made. So that once everything was in place for it to be a very strong decentralized network, he checked out. And for that reason, now Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic are these two leaderless blockchains. That because Vitalik abandoned and the Ethereum Foundation abandoned the immutable Ethereum chain, now both Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic are in the same position of being these networks that aren't dominated by centralized control, which I think is potentially a good thing.
Yeah, I think the leaderless aspect is a great marketing point. Is it something everyone should get behind? Because so many of these other coins have figureheads, and they could get in trouble. They could be blackmailed. Who knows what could happen to them? Now, let's talk about the future of Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. I guess this is a multi-part question. I'm going to throw a lot at you. Should the people in Ethereum, in the community of Ethereum Classic, just try to you know, at times it feels like the two communities are at war. One attacks the others with words. Should the Ethereum Classic people take the upper hand and just ignore Ethereum? Okay, so that's on a community level. On a future level here, when Ethereum goes proof of work stake, if they really do this, could Ethereum, the old chain, split again into people who are like, I want to stay proof of work Ethereum, but I don't want to go to Ethereum Classic?
That could happen. My understanding is that when there's a hard fork, which you would need to transition to Casper, I'm pretty sure, you know, I'm not a developer, but my understanding is that when they transition to proof of stake, that a hard fork will be necessary. So if people think it's worth their time and energy to maintain the old chain, I'm not sure why they would do this. It's already been decided that there will be this transition. Why would it then be contentious? The problem with the DAO is that the DAO fork happened so abruptly, right? There's like a 24-hour period where the Ethereum Foundation held a carbon vote online. The DAO fundraising period, by contrast, was like weeks. So they kind of rushed it through, and that's why there was this contentious hard fork, because people were like, whoa, wait, whoa, 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 what's going on here? Let's not jump over to the forked chain. If it's already been telegraphed in advance that Ethereum is going to transition to proof of stake, I think it's less likely that there would be a contentious hard fork that would create a viable chain. The thing about it is that, as we've seen with Ethereum Classic, it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to have a secondary or have an alternative fork that remains viable. The people in Ethereum Classic have been very, very motivated by principles. So if it's already been telegraphed in advance, it's unlikely that the people who support the prior chain would be motivated to that degree.
Okay, that's something I hadn't really thought about it that deeply yet. So a third Ethereum it'd be hard to do, and there'd have to be some philosophically sound people who are willing to do the work to do it. So
yeah, when there's no real motivation, it's very difficult to pull off.
Okay. So, and my first part of the question, what do you feel about the Ethereum Classic community? Should they just kind of ignore the Ethereum? Should the two try to leave each other alone, or what's going on?
I mean, it's a very hard question, because for me, I think that Ethereum Classic should stick to its guns and take positions that are very contrarian. However, I'm not... There are other people who just want to go along to get along, and they'll make any concessions to the Ethereum supporters. But, you know, where this really becomes relevant is, you know, Digital Currency Group, which is founded by Barry Silbert. They have a company called Grayscale, and they announced a product called the Ethereum Investment Trust, which would derive value from the Ethereum Classic blockchain. Now, this was a very controversial move, and the reason it was controversial was because it was seen by supporters of Ethereum as unfair. They viewed it as a violation of the intellectual property guidelines that would restrict Ethereum Classic products as being marketed as Ethereum. To me, I thought it was a very bold move. I think that Digital Currency Group has contributed more to Ethereum Classic in terms of support and legit, in terms of capital, and in terms of leadership that is very sensitive to everyone involved. So Digital Currency Group doesn't meddle in the affairs of Ethereum Classic. It just has views that have helped clarify some issues. This was a very controversial move, and we really ought to be thinking very deeply, in my opinion, what are our arguments that state that the ETH chain is de facto more legitimate than the ETC chain. The ETC chain is the immutable chain. The ETH chain has the same name as the immutable chain because before the fork, the chain was called ETH. The reason they have the same name is because it was decreed by the Ethereum Foundation. So when there's that degree of control, when there's that degree of molding the public perception surrounding Ethereum by fiat, we should be concerned, and we should question whether it's actually a legitimate kind of qualification to make on ETC versus ETH.
I think the Ethereum Foundation, they got themselves into this mess, so they should get used to people. I mean, they don't own the Ethereum name. I mean, I don't think anyone owns it. At the same time,
they do own the trademark for the name and brand. However, there's no indication that there's a violation of that trademark in Ethereum Classic. That's the place where it gets murky.
Well, that's kind of crazy that they own. Okay, so then there's a centralized authority behind Ethereum. I mean, this is just like no one should own no one owns the Bitcoin name. I mean,
yeah, it's very problematic because, like, who owns my Ethereum Classic tokens? Is it me or the Ethereum Foundation? Who determines what products are Ethereum or not Ethereum? If you're operating within the guidelines, what Ethereum Foundation owns is they own a copyright on the source code, and they own the trademark on the name and logo. And there's no indication that Ethereum Classic is in violation of any of those intellectual property guidelines by resuscitating the immutable chain and making it a blockchain that people can use for Ethereum decentralized applications. But on the Ethereum side, there's a lot of people who are very vocal about this idea that Ethereum Foundation owns Ethereum and has the authority to drive off anyone that they don't view as being part of their agenda. So that's where it needs to happen, a really logic-based, reasoning-based debate needs to happen, and not this kind of tribalism over, are you with this group or this group? That's what really needs to happen.
Well, I give Digital Currency Group a lot of credit for like putting this, just throwing the issue out there, just hitting it head on, because calling their product, using the name Ethereum in their product, they're putting themselves out there to actually. Yeah. I don't think the Ethereum Foundation will be able to beat them. I think they'll have an argument against them, but at the same time, eventually there might be investors that say, "Oh, I thought I was getting into Ethereum, not Ethereum Classic," and they might have to face lawsuits on that side. Or I see this, and I see them taking a huge risk by using just the Ethereum name. I think on a philosophical level, they're probably correct to use it, but I think in the world of reality, there are going to be some people that are just going to sue them eventually for confusion or something.
Well, I think that they've thought it through. I mean, we're talking about a company that invests in over 80 companies in the blockchain space, so they're not impulsive or misguided. They've done a lot of work in blockchain, and they think very deeply about it. I can't read their minds. I just know that this was a very controversial branding, and I think that it forced the debate open. So I think in that sense, it was very valuable. I want the debate to be open. I think it's unresolved. I don't like the idea of shutting the door on it by demanding that Ethereum Classic rebrand. There's no legal argument, in my opinion, that any violation has been made. And look, if this is our right to continue to develop Ethereum on the immutable chain, if that's our right within the guidelines of the blockchain space, we ought to defend that right, not constantly appease the Ethereum Foundation until we don't have a leg to stand on. We need to stand our ground. I think Digital Currency Group definitely did that in a way that other ETC people are reluctant to do. So I was very impressed by that myself, from my perspective as an investor. The thing is, look, I invested in Ethereum prior to the fork, so I invested in this thing, and I was supporting the immutable chain. I was not informed that there would be this hard fork and this meddling by the Ethereum Foundation in the transaction layer of the blockchain. To me, that's a violation of the entire idea that this is a trustless mechanism, that you don't have someone that can actually meddle with the public ledger, right? To me, that's a violation. So if my view of Ethereum is the immutable chain that I invested in, right, that I supported, that other people supported, why should the Ethereum Foundation have this degree of authority where they can tell you what are legitimate Ethereum products and what aren't? And if you're willing to give them that degree of authority, can they say which developers are allowed to develop for Ethereum and which are not, right? We would view that as being a controversial statement, but how come they get to decide which chain is valid, right, based on which one they favor? To me, the debate is still going, and it hasn't been resolved.
So someone in the chat actually reminded me of a very good point, and this is also concerns the future. We've got a lot of future questions coming up. Right now, the Ethereum is known for basically the one big product that was built on Ethereum is the DAO, and that was just disastrous. Someone brought up, like, if Ethereum Classic if someone builds something on Ethereum Classic that's useful and safe and known, that will propel Ethereum Classic above Ethereum. There's a hackathon coming up in China, I know, dealing with Ethereum Classic. You could talk about that. But are there big projects planned on Ethereum Classic here? Do you see that as being a big thing to differentiate Ethereum Classic from Ethereum? Just someone getting some stuff done that's notable and solid.
I definitely agree with you that the differentiation is important. To me, the biggest thing that needs to happen is developers going to bat for investors and getting the monetary strategy implemented as soon as possible. There's going to be a lot of vetting that needs to take place. They're going to need to test it on private servers, so it's going to be time it's going to take time and energy. But I think for me, the thing that Ethereum Classic needs right now in order to differentiate it as an investment vehicle, get that monetary strategy implemented, and that will allow it to serve as a reliable store of value a la Bitcoin. In terms of this event coming up, there's going to be an ETC-a-thon. It's an Ethereum Classic hackathon in Shanghai. That's going on February 24th through 26th. The Chinese are really interested in Ethereum Classic. They're a little off-put by the whole DAO thing, and they don't like the idea of the control of Ethereum being centralized in a geographic region that's not China. So if they can have a seat at the table at Ethereum Classic, where it's a more decentralized governance model, I think that there's a good argument to be made that that might be more advantageous than kind of having the agenda dictated to them, especially because these are miners in China. Chandler Guo is a mining entrepreneur, and we already know that Ethereum is going to be firing all the miners when it transitions to proof of stake. So if you've got a choice between the Ethereum that's going to keep the miners on, right, through their proof of work consensus mechanism, or go to Ethereum where they're going to be firing all the miners down the road, there's a good argument to be made for Ethereum Classic in that situation.
Yeah, I would think every miner that's out there mining Ethereum now, and every miner that has thought about mining Ethereum, would keep a very close eye on this situation with Ethereum Classic and Ethereum. If one is going to go one's going to stay proof of work, one's going to stay proof of stake. Well, if you're a miner, you got to go with the proof of work, and that this leads to that there's some big potential here for Ethereum Classic to expand to some other parts of the world. Now, other niches that it hasn't been in yet, and I'm going to get to that. So I agree with you that the monetary policy has to be made clear. It has to be made clear very soon. And let's imagine that the monetary policy is made clear, that it's going to be 210 million, and it is going to be proof of work. If that's, where do you see Ethereum Classic fitting in the future? Then let's say it's 2020. What is the world going to look like in the world of altcoins with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic and Bitcoin and the others? Well, who will be using Ethereum Classic when you have Bitcoin as the main store of value out there? What will Ethereum Classic be good for? Will it be the silver to Ethereum Classic gold? Will it take the place of what Litecoin's trying to do? What do you see going on in the year 2020?
I think the problem with Litecoin is that it didn't differentiate itself enough from Bitcoin. So there's never a very good argument for investing in Litecoin in place of Bitcoin. They're just too similar. They both come from the first generation of blockchains, and you're going to want to go with the one with the network effects. The argument in favor of Ethereum Classic is that it's got a faster block time, and it's got this Turing-complete element to it that allows you to write decentralized applications much more efficiently. So it can be used for smart contracts. It can be used for Internet of Things. And after the monetary strategy is implemented, it can be used as a store of value. So the same way that you would buy and hold Bitcoin, in a situation where Ethereum Classic is reining in the issuance, just like the halvings with Bitcoin serve that purpose. And there's an overall cap, so it's never going to be more than 210 million or whatever the number is that they decide on. It will serve basically the same purpose as a store of value. So those are the three potential ways that Ethereum Classic could be used in 2020. Store of value like Bitcoin, smart contracts platform, plus Internet of Things.
Yeah, that's very good. That's a very good summation of the future there, and why people would consider Ethereum Classic. That be the niche that it would fit into. You kind of forget about the basic things here when we're talking about this whole Ethereum versus Ethereum Classic here. In the end of the day, the reason people were so excited about Ethereum was because it was supposed to be a Bitcoin that could do many, many more things, and that's what Ethereum Classic should market itself as, I guess, a better Bitcoin. Now, at the same time, I would hope, but before the DAO happened, the Ethereum Classic community, there was an aura coming from it, and I'm not saying everyone was like this, but like, we're going to overtake Bitcoin type of thing. And I think I think that's a mistake. I think Dash has sometimes put themselves in that position too. I think it is a mistake, despite whatever cool things you offer, to get into the position we're going to overtake Bitcoin, because it's only leading to disappointment. I think it puts the expectations so super high that it leads to disappointment and crash. What do you think about that?
I think that sentiment was kind of at its height during this incident called Hernado. When Mike Hearn left Bitcoin, he kind of rage quit Bitcoin and said that it's a failed experiment. He was interviewed by the New York Times, and he left to join R3. And that's when there was this kind of general malaise surrounding Bitcoin, because it was being associated at that point with Silk Road and with Mt. Gox. And people saw Ethereum as being this pristine, unblemished alternative, which had all of these decentralized application possibilities. So at that time, when Bitcoin was at its low, kind of in terms of people's perceptions, that helped Ethereum gain all of that momentum. I think that we're now seeing basically a turn in the other direction, where people are seeing the kind of move fast and break things mentality of Ethereum as being a bit of an issue, a problem, a problematic element of that blockchain, whereas Bitcoin, I think, is a lot more, I think there's a lot more confidence in Bitcoin. That said, we've just had this really aggressive run-up with Bitcoin. I would not be terribly surprised to see Bitcoin react similarly to what happened in June of July, where there was this aggressive run-up and then a dump and then consolidation. Sometimes Bitcoin gets ahead of itself and it needs to cool off. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Bitcoin, but if it were to lose 10% or 20% and then consolidate and then rise back up to 1,000, we shouldn't be alarmed by that. Not any more than we would be alarmed by what happened in June and July. And kind of looking at the graph, you can kind of understand that this is something that we should foresee happening periodically, right? It's not an aberration.
All right. So right now with altcoins, we have so many coins out there. It's crazy. But there are about 6 or 7, I say, that are the top ones that are talked about. Now in 2020, at first there's a two-part question, I guess. What other altcoins do you like? Are there any other altcoins that you like that interest you? And 2, in the year 2020, how many legitimate altcoins will there be? More than today? What do you see the scene looking like in 2020? And what altcoins do you currently like now, if any others?
Well, I really like the idea that I think you put out on your program, which is to buy and hold Bitcoin. And I would say that people should be relying on the store of value that Bitcoin provides. And like I said, if there is a correction and it loses 10 or 20% and then regains it, you shouldn't view that as the end of the world. If you need to tough that out, it helps build character. It helps as a way of just showing that you have discipline to weather those storms and not be kind of compelled to overtrade, right? To do too much altcoin trading in order to maximize your profits, because you're just going to trade at the wrong time, overtrade, and things will just. There's so many potentials to lose money in altcoins that really going with Bitcoin and investing time and energy into keeping your Bitcoins safe from loss or theft is really good. So something that I like to put out there is Copay shared wallet is a good way to maintain your Bitcoin private keys, but also have them on 2 devices, both of which are needed in order to authorize a transaction. That way, for your Bitcoins to be stolen, someone would need to steal both devices, or you would need to lose your mnemonics for both devices. So investing time and energy into keeping your Bitcoin safe might actually be a better resource allocation than over trading in altcoins. I wish I could say that I have huge confidence in Ethereum Classic. Like I said, I'd like to see the devs go to bat for the investors and implement the monetary strategy. I think once that happens, it could be a very good investment. Zcash is interesting, but there's a lot of inflation. So, I mean, you don't want to be the first person that buys Zcash, right? Because the first token that's issued isn't worth any more than the token that was issued yesterday. So when that inflationary model to Zcash will subside and when it will start gaining in value, I don't really know, but I'm waiting out Zcash. Like I said, it's interesting. I would have to do a lot of research in it before I felt confident investing in it. Yeah, I mean, some people are going to have good arguments for these altcoins, but I think it's always really risky.
You know, Jerry brings up some really good points here, and I hope he serves as an example for everybody. He brings up the word research and discipline, and I think some of the young, I think some of the young people out there who are getting involved in cryptocurrency don't want to take the time to research altcoins or Bitcoin, and don't have the discipline to just stick with a strategy, buy and hold, something that might seem boring and not flashy. And I think yesterday, when I was very tired and doing a video, that's what I was trying to convey when saying that I can do this 60-hour fast. I wanted to talk about I'm a very disciplined person, and I think Jerry is a very disciplined person. And I try to get people like that on this show to serve as examples to people, because I think discipline is a simple but lost art. And if people can be disciplined and can use their heads and can do research, that this cryptocurrency space, that Bitcoin, is just an incredible opportunity. But there's so many pitfalls along the way that if you're not disciplined, if you don't know how to do research, you can get into big trouble with the cloud mining, buying some crazy altcoin. And so Jerry just reminds me of all the reasons that I bring up these warnings all the time, that we need to get everybody on a more disciplined path in this space, because they will find it to be very rewarding, I believe, if they're disciplined, and it will just create more of a stability in the space. Jerry, I just rambled on there. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that if you weather the storm, right, if you invest in Bitcoin and you're holding it when it takes 5%, 10% or whatever, a drop, right, which is part of the entire price discovery mechanism. You know, if you're there and you experience that, don't automatically assume that this is some terrible crisis, that it's a loss, that you did something wrong. You know, you should congratulate yourself for having the discipline not to react with panic to these kinds of changes. And you know, you do build character the more that you stick with an investment for the long term. And like, I think that the best investors are the ones that do a lot of research, decide a certain long-term strategy, and stick with it. You know, it's really easy to fritter away all of your time and resources by over trading.
I'd also like to point out that in the cryptocurrency space, especially on the technical side, we have some incredible geniuses. And what I have learned, and I have been impressed by their brains. I mean, I am impressed by that guy, Vitalik. I mean, he is clearly a genius. But what I've learned is that you can have an IQ of 150, just something that we can't even fathom like that. But that doesn't mean that you have discipline. It doesn't mean that you think out every single decision to the point of like, where is this going to lead us if we take this path here? So again, it is a lost art, and I think people, just because there is a gloriously intelligent person saying we got to do X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't mean they should be able to. They might be able to figure it out faster than you, but if they figured it out really quick without research or like like discipline, then you know what? All the brains in the world aren't going to make that, aren't going to fix it if you're not disciplined. That's what I'm trying to say here.
There's also a certain kind of social benefit that comes from being an investor rather than a trader. A trader can make profits for themselves and their family, and that's a positive benefit in one's personal sphere. If you invest in the long term and you invest not only capital, let's say you don't have access to capital, you invest research and kind of feedback, right? You blog about it, or you talk about why you appreciate a certain cryptocurrency platform. That long-term investment helps build a foundation for that particular blockchain, right? So you can actually be contributing towards the kind of social good in a way far more efficiently if you buy and hold than if you're trading every day. Then you're maybe benefiting or maybe not benefiting so much of altcoins, depending on how the market is trending, right? So I think that that's a valid statement to make, is that long-term investment can be more productive in terms of the benefit that it has on that particular blockchain, that protocol, that network.
All right, I think we should wrap it up right now. We've been here for about an hour now. This has just been a great discussion. We're going to have you back on to talk some more philosophy. I want to hear everyone's feedback on this. What direction you think we could go with Jerry here? If we should have an Ethereum Classic / Ethereum show every 2 weeks. Should we have something about crypto finance and crypto anarchism? I mean, we can go in a lot of directions here. So leave your comments. Jerry, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Anything else?
That does it for me. Yeah, I had a good time. I look forward to the next opportunity to talk. I thought it was a really good conversation.
Yeah, a lot of interesting insights here you don't hear many other places. I like this. I like that we're talking about the situation and just talking about it in a calm, rational manner. Everyone, thank you, Jerry, for being on the show. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Remember to subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video. I hope everyone all over Europe and different parts of the world like this time slot today. Do leave comments about that. I know the East Coast people in the United States might be a little disappointed, but hey, you'll hear it later. I will be in the chat very soon. I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.